Hi everybody, it's Richard here again and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to look through or revisit the half a dozen or so David Bowie remix albums and see what I think of them now that a bit of time has passed. I'll also take a look at the Never Let Me Down 2017. Although it's not a remix album, it's more a reworking album. I thought I would group it in with the rest of them. Okay, so there is about, I think it's 5 or 6. I think it's 6 including Never Let Me Down. So the first one up, first of all I'm going to do this in chronological order of the original release, not of the release of the remix albums. So the first one up is the David Bowie Space Oddity album, which was originally released in 1969 under the name David Bowie. And this was remixed by Tony Visconti. Now he actually produced the whole of the album apart from the Space Oddity song itself, which was produced by Gus Dudgeon. However, this is the highlight of this album, is his remix of Space Oddity. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I like the way that he took away the sort of intro, the fade in intro of the acoustic guitar, and it just starts with acoustic guitar, and I think what he has done is seriously enlighten the song quite a bit. I would almost say it's my favourite version of this. However, not all is good. Another good thing though is that they've added in the track Conversation piece, which should have been on the first album, or this album was actually the second album, because it's far too good a song to sit at the B-side of The Prettiest Star. Now, other good things are Janine is a little bit more sprightly than normal, and Wild Eyed Boyfriend from Free Cloud I think is a little bit more bombastic. The orchestra is more up front. However, there's two things I don't like about this, and one is Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed, where I think it's very echoey and there's certain guitar parts that are missing, and at the end whenever you have the horns taking the song out you can hardly hear it at all. Very disappointing. Another one is Signet Committee. There's little guitar licks throughout the song which they're there, but they're so far back in the mix you can hardly hear them, and I think it actually destroys the song. So those two are bits of disasters for me, but the rest of it I think is pretty good. So yeah, it's okay. I'll say this now, I will always go back to the original albums rather than the remix ones, but this one's not too bad. The next one is The Man Who Sold the World, and it was called the Metrobolist or the Metrobolist. I don't know which way to pronounce it. I keep saying Metrobolist, but I have never heard anyone else say that, but I'm going to continue saying that. And yeah, this is probably one of the better remix albums. I think everything is really lifted. For example, in the Man Who Sold the World, you actually get counting, which I've never ever heard before. I think The Width of a Circle is really brightened up an awful lot, as is All the Madmen. Now the only song that wasn't remixed off this was After All, because Tony Visconti says that he couldn't do anything to improve it, so he left it as it is. Running Gun Blues is a bit spacier, but the drum sound almost sounds like an explosion when you hear it, which you didn't get on the original, but it does sound good. I think the Superman's lifted as well, but overall I think this is a success. But yet again, I'll still probably go back to my original RCA, Man Who Sold the World, but this one here mocks the cover of the US cartoon version, which I think is terrible, but there you go. So this is a thumbs up, definitely, this one for me. The next one I've only got the CD of, and it's the 2003 remix of the Ziggy album, and I really do like the way they've adopted or changed the cover, alternate version of the cover. Now I think this one is the most subtly remixed album, and awful lot of it I can't tell the difference between this and the original. What I will say, in 5 years, whenever the song is fading out, you hear little bits of guitar part you don't hear before, and it sounds a little bit out of place actually, because you've never heard it before. but Soul Love and Managed Daydream, they more or less sound the same to me. The only thing I will say, and maybe I'm wrong here, is the song Hang On To Yourself. It sounds a little bit flatter now, so it does, but still, it's not a bad album. I would love this in vinyl because I just love that cover. But basically there's not a lot of difference between this, in my hearing anyway, to the original album, and this one was remixed by Ken Scott, as I say, in 2003. So it's a meh album really, but as I say, the wee bit at the end of 5 years is odd, I think, with the guitar. Okay, next up is Station to Station, and this is the Harry Maslin remix from 2010. And the main feature of this is the vocals are really put forward. You can really hear it. For example, in the song TVC15, during the instrumental intro, you can actually hear him say TVC15, which I'd never ever heard before. Wild as the Wind is, the vocals are very upfront as well, and there's a little difference in the end of each verse, or one of the verses, where there seems to be a little bit of a gap before the other instruments come in. It's hard to explain, but it does sound a little bit off kilter, but the sound of this is really good, and Station to Station itself sounds really good as well. Word on a Wing is almost a massive change because Bowie's vocals are really up front, and you can hear how good a singer he actually is. Same with Wild as the Wind. But yeah, this is a good remix, but as I said before, I will always go back to the original. I think this one sounds, it does sound a little bit brighter, but still very good. Next up, this is the remix of Lodger, and yeah, this is the album that really did need remix. I always felt the original version was very muffled, very dry, and almost very flat, and this does bring everything up a bit, especially the instruments. You hear things like African Night Flight, all those sort of Eastern instruments, or wherever they're from, really do jump out at you. And then you get the song Fantastic Voyage, and the drums at the start of that I think are really good. They're really lifted up, maybe a little bit echoey, but they still sound so good. Things like Look Back in Anger I think are excellent, and there's one track, Boys Keep Swinging, where they've actually changed the end of it. The sort of manic instrumental ending has been changed completely, with almost a different guitar put on there. Maybe it was in that original mix which I couldn't hear, but it does sound weird. But generally speaking, this is actually better than the album which was originally released in 1979. DJ's another good example, and Red Sails, of course, which sounded really muffled, sounds so bright and so in your face really. So yeah, Lodger is a success for me, and this is one I would actually go back and play more than the original, but don't worry, I love the original as well. So Lodger, the Tony Visconti mix from, I think it was about 2016 or so, something like that. So I'm glad to get a copy of this. This is actually from the Who Can I Be Now box set, which I never bought, but I managed to snag a copy off eBay. And the last one, which is not actually a remix, is a reworking of Never Let Me Down. And whenever I first heard this, I was never too sure. I thought, yeah, it's okay. But I stand by what I say. He's taken, or Reeves Gabrels has taken, a 1980s album and almost made it into a 1990s album. And examples are Glass Spider, which he didn't take away the embarrassing introduction, which I wish he had, but he turned the best song into almost like a grungy type song. It's okay, but I prefer the original. The song Zeros is much better in this because they've taken away all that fake applause and all the rest of it, and it's turned it into a pretty good song. Time Will Crawl is the acoustic version. I think it's the same one that came out on one of those CDs from the 2008, which one was it, The Collection or I Select? I think it might have been I Select Bowie. and it's more or less the same as that. Day in, day out, there's not a lot of difference, although this one does sound a little bit sharper, and beat of your drum sounds very gothic. It sounds, the original sounded a little bit gothic anyway, but this sounds even more gothic. But the major difference is Bang Bang. I completely reconstructed that. There's acoustic guitars in it, and it turns it into a half decent song. I was never a fan of that song, but this one works. So yeah, which one do I prefer? I actually do like the both of them. It's not his best album. It's down there with his worst. But there's certain parts of this that show it could have been a much better album. So those are a look at the Bowie remix albums, plus Never Let Me Down. I was doing this video because I went through all the box sets and I thought, oh, we'll talk about the remix albums, and so there you go. Okay, that's me for now. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to have another video quite soon. All the best now. Bye bye.